I'm the Moonlit Page Turner. Grab your treat, grab your tea. Let's talk books. This month we traveled to Austria, and I have two selections for you. We have our first children's book. It's Madeline by Ludwig Bemelmans, and then we have Frozen Time by Anna Kemp. Before we get into this month's reads, let's get into our treat. If you are ever in Austria, you must have the strudel. There are lots of different types of strudel for this sweet treat. I made Topfenstrudel, which is like a cheese curd, and it has lemon in it as well. So it is sweeter, but it does have that tartness of the lemon as well as the flakiness of the crust. I couldn't find the cheese that they used in the recipe that I will post below, so I used cream cheese instead. That's good. Frozen Time by Anna Kim is about picking up the pieces after tragedy. Now, if you're thinking Anna Kim, that does not sound very Austrian. She is actually originally from South Korea. Her family moved to Germany when she was young, and she's lived in Austria since she was 7. This book does take place in Austria. Mostly. It gets kind of complicated. So we have two main characters. We have Nora, and Nora works for the Red Cross. And then we have Luen. Luen is from the former Yugoslavia, and this book takes place about 7 years after the conflict in Kosovo between the Albanians and the Serbs. Luen loses his wife. The way that he loses his wife is that she's abducted and they don't know what happens to her. So he's going to use Nora's help to try to help him find his wife. In the meantime, him and Nora get to know each other and have a relationship. Sort of, kind of. It's kind of confusing. There is not a lot of description in here, and the point of view of character to character is not well explained. I see this happen quite a bit with translation books where I feel like it's missing something. Maybe there was something in the original German that just doesn't fully translate to English. I would really wish that they would have put who the character was at the beginning of each section or chapter, because it did take me sometimes a couple pages to figure out whose story we were telling. That being said, it is a really, again, par for the course for this sad book because he loses his wife and he is kind of lost without her and he has to keep reliving the loss of his wife over and over again. He is very detailed in what she was wearing that day because he needs to be in order to get help. When they do go back home, we do see a little bit of his life before, and I loved the story of how his mother met his father. It was really sweet, and to me, that was the best part of the book. And then we see what's happening with Nora's friends who work as like forensic anthropologists to try to find the missing and to tell a complete story about what happened. We do find out what happens to Luen's wife, and that also leads us to a very, very depressing ending for this book. If you're into sad books, this one's for you. And it wasn't a bad book. It just was really kind of confusing when I was reading it. I couldn't figure out what was going on. It took me a couple pages to get into the mindset of whose story I was hearing. The second story that I chose for Austria was Madeline by Ludwig Bemelmans. And I'd actually never read Madeline. I think I've seen the cartoon, but looking at the book, it's very short. It's about 46 pages, and I'll show you. It's got more picture than word for sure. So, some of you may be familiar with the story in an old house in Paris that was covered in vines. Lived 12 little girls in two straight lines, and they go on an adventure in Paris. And so, you see some of the monuments and the places to go if you happen to go to Paris. Like there's Notre Dame, we have Sacre-Cœur by Momont, and they go on an adventure. And then Madeline does not feel well, and she ends up going to the hospital, and she ends up with a scar on her stomach, so we can assume that she had her appendix taken out. Originally, I thought she was an orphan. But you find out at the hospital that her father gives her a bunch of gifts. So she's just out of school. And her friends going to see her at the hospital makes them want to have their appendix taken out too. It is a very cute book. The pictures are nicely colored, very bright. What I found more interesting though was about the story of the author. So Ludwig Bemelmans, excuse me. He is from Austria, but he spends a lot of his adult life in Paris. Hence, Madeline takes place in Paris. He has a very interesting upbringing. His father ended up leaving his mother, as well as Ludwig's governess, who was pregnant by his father for yet another mistress. So there's a lot of scandal there. And then he goes and has this whole professional life. And of course, he's alive during the Great Wars. So there's things that happen with that. And then he knows all these publishers, but he can't get published. And there is a lot of drama there. So this is kind of one of those books where I feel like the author's life is a little bit more interesting than the book that he wrote. He only wrote a couple of Madeline stories, although it has been picked up since then. This is very cute. If you like French, if you're a Francophile and like love French stuff, you're going to like this book because you'll see all of, again, the major landmarks in France. But I would suggest maybe checking out Ludwig's Wikipedia page because you might find something a little bit more interesting there. Hey, thanks for stopping by. Next month, we're traveling to Azerbaijan where we're going to read Ali and Nino. If you are interested in what's coming up next, please visit us on Instagram or Goodreads. See you then.